This is Gemara Metziah, Daf Ayin Dalid, and we're holding in the bottom of Ayin Gimel Amid Beis, about 12 lines from the bottom. The first word on line is Rav Chama. Teaches the Gemara, Amar Rav Chama, Haimandi of Zuzi Lechavri. Someone gives money to a friend, Lemizvan Lechamra. Someone gives money to his friend and makes him a shliach. He sends him out to buy for him wine. Upasha. And the guy who went out to buy the wine, he was negligent, and he did not buy the wine. What is the halacha? Mishalei lei. The shliach has to pay him back. K'deka'azil aparvasa dizul shafat. Says the Gemara, he has to pay him by giving him wine the amount that he would have been able to buy at the port of Zal Shafat, which is where they sell wine very cheap. So what we're seeing over here is, it's not just simply, you asked me to do something for you and I didn't do it. I caused you a loss. Because if I would have done it, what would have happened? I would have gotten a cheap price. So says the Gemara, not only do I have to pay you back, but I have to do it at the price of the cheapest place where they sell wine in the port of Zal Shafat. Amar Amemar says Amemar, I'm reading the to come in there of Zin Ben Ardai. And Amar, he said, Kikam Rav Chama, when the Rav Chama say this din, Hani Mili Biyayin Stam. That's what someone was told Stam to buy wine. He wasn't told exactly. Aval Biyayin Zeh. If he was told to buy a particular wine, then Eloi. Then the shliach is not obligated to pay him at the lowest price that you could find any wine. Why? To me, Emar, who says, because who says you're able to buy this particular wine? So if it was Stam wine, then you got to pay him at the lowest price. But if it was this wine, then it says that Emar, you do not. That's Rav Chama and modified by a Memar. Rav Ashi Amar, 4 lines to the bottom, comes on Rav Ashi and he disagrees. And he says, Afilu yayin stam. Even if he does told to buy stam wine, nami loy. He's not obligated to pay him back. Why not? Says the Gemara. My time, 3 lines to the bottom. Bring us back to an old sugya. Says the Gemara, Smachli. It's a reliance. Vasmachta loy kanya. And there is no kinyan in such a scenario. So Machlek is Rav Ashi and Rav Chama. Says the Gemara, 2 lines on the bottom. Ul Rav Ashi, and according to Rav Ashi, Ma'ishanam, Mehaditinan. According to Rav Ashi, how is this any different from that which we find in the Mishnah towards the end of the Masechta and Daf Kuf Dalid? The Mishnah over there is discussing someone accepts a field from his friend to be a sharecropper, to give him back a certain quantity of wheat, and then he didn't do his shlichos. He doesn't work the field stays fallow. And the question is, how much does he have to pay back the original balabayis? So we said we evaluate how much the field is able to produce, and you give him half of that. So says the Gemara, said the Mishnah, says the Mishnah over there that the reason is because the derech is to write that if I do not work the field and I leave it fallow, I am going to pay you back. B'mitzvah, I'll pay you back from the best stuff. So ask the Gemara, you Rav Ashi just taught us that in our case, it's just an esmakta and you wouldn't have to pay him back. How come over there you clearly do have to pay back? Says the Gemara, Hasam us biyadai. Over there, he does how to work the field. You didn't do your job. Whereas by us, hacha la biyadai. Why is it not biyadai? As the Tab Rashi speaks out, because how do we know? Why are we so convinced that they're going to sell it to him? Maybe they're not going to sell him the wine. Shema loyim karuhu, and that's the reason why Rav Ashi is of the opinion, and as much as the shliach didn't do what he was supposed to, he does not have to pay back him at the cheapest price of the wine. Continues the Gemara, what happens when we multiply this by multiple people? Amar Rava teaches Rava on the top line of Ayin Dalam and Aleph. Hani Bei Talasa. Diyavi Zuzi Lachad. 3 people gave money to one person, Mizle Midi, to buy something. Vizavin Lachad Minayu. And he bought it only for one of them. He did not have intention to buy it for all of them. The halacha is Zavin Lekulu. Automatically, it's considered that they're all shutfim. Automatically, it's considered that they all have a kinyan in that item. And he explains the Gemara 3 lines down. Amaran, it's only true. This is only if each person did not deliver and sign over his monies on his own. In as much as there were 3 people, but if each one came on their own and gave over their money and signed, then the one that he bought it for, and only goes to him, and we do not assume that automatically it goes to all of them. Says the Gemara, Amar Apapi, a little bit of a first cousin, Mishmei de Rava. Hi, Siti Musa, Kanya. Siti Musa, that if there's a signature that one signs on the barrel that he made a kinyan, says the Gemara, this Situmta is considered a kinyan. Lamai Hilchasa, who cares? Rav Chaviva Amar, Lemekanya Mamish, it means he has a kinyan. Rabbanan Amri, Likabuli Ale Misha Para, that you accept a dreadful curse, meaning for the moment you sign on that barrel, it's considered yours, and therefore if you're going to back out, you're under the Misha Para, the curse, the backing out of your words. Also like Misha Para. And but in a place that the minig is to make a kinyan, there is a kinyan. Before we move on, let's just see Rashi for a moment. Rashi says, Situmta on the second line, they sign in the barrels of wine by many at one time. They leave it in these storehouses. They pick it up one at a time, sell their own source. Meaning, if you have 1,000 barrels of wine in your warehouse and I'm buying 100, but I'm only going to pick up one every week, let's say, for example. So I go and I sign on each of the barrels so I know which ones are mine, and then I pick them up, says the Gemara. So what does that do for us? It makes it that you're under the Misha Para, but in a place where they have a minhag that it's an actual kinyan, then it facilitates that there is an actual kinyan. We continue about 13 lines down, the 2 dots. So the Mishnah continued that what if it's not Yotza Ashar? What if it's not Yotza Ashar entirely? What if it's Yotza Ashar in a minimized sense? That it's Yotza Ashar for the Kaitrim, those who cut, but maybe not for others, and we'll see exactly what this means. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav, teaches Rav, at this stage of Kaitzrim, what are the peiros lacking? Says Rav, Mechusar Shtayim. They're lacking 2 malachais, paisek, and therefore you're allowed to stipulate on them in the low price, even though it's not a full-fledged Yotza Ashar. The marketplace did not go out for everyone. However, says Rav, Shalosh, if it's one stage before Kaitzrim, then it's lacking 3 malachais, Einai paisek. Then you cannot stipulate on such an item. The opinion of Rav. Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel disagrees. And Shmuel says, Bidei Adam afilu meya paisik. Once it's at the stages that it's Bidei Adam, once it grew to the point of that which has to grow, and now it's man-made actions that have to be done to the crop, even if 100 actions are lacking, you're allowed a paisik. But Bidei Shamayim, if there's any form of action that needs to be done from heaven, afilu achas einai paisik. And Rashi speaks out the obvious nekuda. B'dei Shamayim afilu achas einai paisik. Why? To be yemar dasya v'yabiyad lahashlim hilkach ke'ein loyihu. Because who says it's going to happen? Meaning, says Shmuel, it's not a vart. There's 2 malachis left. There's 3 malachis left. It's ready to be sold. Says Shmuel, you missed the boat. Has to do, is it up to man-made processes or is it still in the hands of God? Tanan, says the Gemara, Paisakimai, Allah Gadish, let us stipulate when it's in the stack of grain. Ask the Gemara, but it's lacking to dry it out, to let it lie in the sun. Let me avish to dry out. And it's lacking number 2, that's number 2. And it's lacking lemidash, threshing, umidram, and it's lacking to winnow the produce. So seemingly there's too many processes lacking. Explains the Gemara, the shadi b'cham of yavish already dried. Ulishmuel the Amar, the Yishamai v'loachas einei paisek v'amel choser midra, and it's choser midra the bidei shamayimi. That midra is a form that it needs heavenly assistance. That when you throw up the item and it scatters, so that's something that's not fully man-made. Says Gemara, yes, it is. Efshar ben avasa, you could always winnow with the form of a sieve. You could, shake it through, getting rid of the chaff. One way is to throw it up and hope that the wind comes and blows away the heavy stuff, the garbage, the light stuff, the heavy stuff, the good stuff. The other way, says Shmuel, it could be done with the adam, and that's the reason why at that point you would, yes, be able to stipulate. And we continue quoting the next part of the Mishnah, which is Vala'avit shalanavim, on a vat of grapes. Asks the Gemara, 1 second, but it's lacking, number 1, michmar. It's lacking, you got to put them in the vat. And you got to bring it to the press. To thresh, and you got to then draw the wine out of the press. So it's lacking 4 processes, says the Gemara, Rav Chia. Like Rav Chia explained, that we're discussing a vat of grapes. So it's not the nekuda that it's the vat, but the nekuda is that it's already in the vat and the process already began. So therefore, you're not lacking those earlier processes. Says, but 1 second, you're still lacking 3. Again, Akash and Rav. Answers Gemara, Basa du Zavin hu nagid. Talking about a place, and the one that buys it is one that draws it out of the vat. Therefore, that process is not considered to be lacking. We continue the 2 dots smack in the middle. Valamatan shel zaitim. Says the Gemara, 1 second, again, the same exact kasha. V'amachusar, but it's lacking the process. Michmar v'yulu lebei dapi. Lemeidash u'lemingad. But it's lacking, says the Gemara, you got to put it into the press, and you got to step on it, and you got to draw out the oil. Says the Gemara, Tani Rav Chia, you get to last process to the oven. The one who buys it, he's the one that draws it out of the press. We continue with the next part of the Mishnah. The pieces of clay of the potter. Ask the Gemara, Amai, why are you allowed to stipulate? But you're lacking in these process. You're lacking lefufi to roll the clay. Levushi, let it dry out. Ayuli latuna. Then you got to put it in the oven. Lemisraf, and it has to harden it. Ulemeipak, and you got to take it out. So you're lacking many processes. Says the Gemara, it's already been rolled and dried. You're still lacking 3 akasha on Rav. Again, Basa do this oven, the one who buys it, he's the one that takes it out of the oven. We continue 20 lines to the bottom. And the lime, once it's in the oven, ask the Gemara, 1 second. To burn the lime, vafuki, take out the stones, umeidak, and to spread the little stones, all the different processes to make sid, limestone. According to Shmuel, why do you need to say this? That's already being the oven, because that's a man-made process. Says the Gemara. According to Shmuel, what the Brisa meant is misharoi l'shikol b'shilchan, when it's roi to put in the oven. Continues the Gemara. So after going through all different processes and figuring out how to fix according to Rav and Shmuel, says the Gemara 15 lines to the bottom. Tanu Rabbanon Ein Paiskin Ala Beitzin Shal Yaitz. You're not allowed to stipulate on the potter's clay Ad Sheyasu Divri Rameir until the actual clay is created. Amar Rav Yosi b'medvar mumran is for Lavan. This is talking about the white one. For Shachar, the dark one. Kfar Chananya v'chavrusal, like doing Chananya. Kfar Shichen v'chavrusal is doing Shichen. Paiskin afal b'shein l'zeh yesh l'zeh. Then you're allowed to stipulate why. Because you could theoretically give the item right now. I'm buying the item today. You don't have it. Okay, someone else has it. So you always are able to get it. Ameimar says the Gemara Yavizuzi Miki Maili Efra. Ameimar would give money as soon as they started the whole process. Come on. Iker Ameir Amar Achiyasas be created. Iker Yavizi Amar. Who cares if the process didn't even start? So what's our mayor doing? Like says the Gemara. Lailam Karav Yaisi. Actually, what's that Ameimar doing? Lailam Karav Yaisi. Ba'asr Ameimar Osik Afra. Really, we're going with the opinion of Rav Yaisi, but explains the Gemara that it's only after love and not after shachar, but in Asr Dam Eimar, Ashik Afra. Says the Gemara, I demalu Afra, Samchadaite, V'yavlu Zuze, V'loi Samchadaite. Says the Gemara, no, it depends what the story is. If you already put it into the dirt, then Samchadaite, this is Asr Dam Eimar, and if not, not. So says the Gemara, let's go into the last part of the Mishnah. So the last part of the Mishnah dealt with the Zevel, dealt with the manure. Says the Gemara, Zevel, says the Gemara, we could stipulate on Zevel on the manure any time of the year. Said the Mishnah, whereas Rav Yasi comes along and says, no, only if there is Zevel in the Ashba. And the Chacham said, no, they're Mekel. So we have three opinions. The Tanakama said, Kol Yimos Hashana. Rav Yosi said, only when it's in the Ashba. And the Chachamim said, it's Mutter. So what's the obvious kasha that everyone's thinking? That the Chachamim is the Tanakama. Says the Gemara, Chachamim, I know Tanakama. Amar Rava. Comes along Rava as we turn over to Ayin Dalid Amid Beis. No, there's a fundamental difference between the Tanakama and the Chachamim. Yemois Agishamim Ika Beinayu. What's the chilik? So let's let the ultimate Rebbe, let's let Rashi explain the chilik. Explains Rashi. Tanakama call Yemois Ashana Kamar. The Tanakama emphasized always. Upaligale Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Yosi argued, and he said no. There's no difference between Mazachanima, no difference between Yisham. And the Chachamim Atirim, Avabi She'ein Loi, why? Yesh La'acherim. Im Yemoisachama, hey, then it's true. Shakol Yesh Lahen. Because in the summer, everyone has the manure Zevel. Shekvar Nirkav, Vinishaf, B'Yemoisach Yishamim, and Asa Zevel. Avo B'Yemoisach Yishamim Loi. Because the Chachamim are only going within this Svara. Or Avabi She'ein Lezu, Yesh Lezu. That someone has to have it. That's only going to be in the summertime, not in the winter, whereas according to the Tanakama, it's going to be even in the winter. And we continue the top line of Ayin Dalet Amud Beis. Upaisek imai kishar gavaya. Said the Mishnah that you're allowed to stipulate at the higher price. Let's see a bunch of stories to figure this out. Says the Gemara, Gavra the Avzuzi l'nedunya. There was someone that gave money for the nedunya to bechamua. Someone gave money to buy a nedunya, takshitim, adornments, etc. On condition that the takshitin would be for a certain day. The saif zal nedunya. So of course, as we can anticipate, as the date comes, the price, the value of that which he bought drops. Also, kamidra baba amar le I paskis ima gishar gavaya shakil kashta. If you stipulated with him from the beginning that if it goes down, you're going to pay kishar gavaya, the higher price, meaning you're going to get it for cheaper than shakal kashta. Then you'll have to take it based on what it is right now, and you'll have to pay based on today's price. Viloi, but if you did not stipulate, then shakal kemei kara. If you did not stipulate, then you have to pay the higher price like you said in the beginning and get the item at the lower price. So if you stipulated high sake, then you're going to be allowed to pay the lower price. If you didn't stipulate, then it goes with the original price. Amrle, that's the din, says Rav Papa. Amrle Rabbanan Rav Papa, Viloi pasak, if you didn't stipulate, shakal kemei kara. Why? Ma'is ninu, u'ma'is leikanu. Say the Chachamim, Rav Papa. Why is there a kinyan bechlal? You didn't make a kinyan, you gave cash. And what's, of course, the halacha? Halacha is, ma'is leikainais. Amr lehu. Answers Rav Papa. Anonami lekapula misha parakamin. You're right. There's no real kinyan. I'm just referencing the fact that you'd accept the misha para. That what? Ipasek yishar gavaya moicher kahader beim mekabel misha para. Iloi pasek, then what? Lokeach kahader beim mekabel lokeach misha para. Before we go, Vaiter, let's take one moment to look at Rashi. Rashi just spells out what we just said. Upaisiki Mike Yashar Gavaya in the third in our line says Rashi, Akulu mas nisan koi. Shezarach lives like ima, you have to stipulate with Sheim Yizlu that if it goes down, v'yifzechu demei ashar, v'yigba shara peirois. And what does it mean the value goes down? That means that the market of Paris went up. Sheyinu yoiser b'sela. Sheyitin lo yashar azul. If you stipulate, you're pay at the lower price. Whereas if you didn't, then you have to pay at the current price. It says the Gemara, it's relevant for what? Who's going to accept upon? Potentially, the Misha Para. 12 lines down, the first one line is Shapara, Amar le Ravina le Rabapa. Says Ravina le Rabapa, Umimai de Rabbanan, who do Baliga le de Rav Shimon. How do you know? Mimai de Rabbanan, who do Baliga le de Rav Shimon. That what? The Amrima is like Kanu, Vaviluachi, and still, Ibasik Shagava, Shakil Kidahashta, Viloi Pasik, if you didn't stipulate, Shakil Kidameikara. Asks Ravina to Rav Papa, wait, maybe there's a totally different way of looking at this. Dilma Rav Shimon, maybe the whole Mishnah is only within the sheet of whom? Rav Shimon, who holds what? Damar, yes, ma'is kainais, and therefore everything changes. Because if the ma'is could be an actual kinyan, then shakal kiashta. Ilo pasik shakal karam. Why? Because the cash is an actual kinyan. But that's according to Rav Shimon. Avalu Rabbanan, but maybe according to the Rabbanan, Bein Basak, Bein Loi Basak, Shakal Kashta doesn't make a difference. Why did I do Atara Zila? Because one always wants to get the lower price. That was the Kasha that Ravina asked Rababa, that maybe we're looking at this all wrong. The old Kasha was Ma'is, Kainais. Maybe the answer is yeah, because we're going in the opinion of Rav Shimon. Amar lei. So responds Rav Papa 3 lines from the Y lines. Rav Shimon. When did Rav Shimon say Ma'is Kainis Bechataro? Rav Shimon only said that if the price didn't change. Betreitari. However, when he paid the money for one evaluation, and now there's a different one, Mi Amar. What's my raya? Says Rav Papa. Says Rav Papa to Ravina, if you're not going to be maskim to me that Rav Shimon doesn't hold of his din in this case, Misha Barak Rav Shimon Lesley, there can never be a Misha Barak for the buyer. So maybe yeah, maybe Rav Shimon holds there's never such a thing as a Misha Barak for the Lekeach. But Tanya can't be learned in a brayso because makom kach halacha. But Amar Chacham Misha Barak v'chulu. My mikol makoim lav deloishna Lekeach. So explains Rav Papa, it has to be. It can't be that Rav Shimon would be relevant in our case, because then there'll never be a Misha Bara for the loikech. Kikam Rav Shimon v'chad tara, however, betrayed tara, loy amar. Normally Rav Acha prayed to Rav Ashi v'tebeg. Why don't we say that what the shliach shavim meikara? Amar le b'tagra dezavin umizvan. We're talking about a case of that it was buying and selling, and that's the way that we're going to learn the Mishnah. So the truth is, we really are almost out of time over here. But it's important to look at Rashi. Again, Rashi on the first wide line explaining what's this new way of learning Rav Shimon. That is only a Mishapara, but that is only, Ma'is Kainais, Bechad Tara, and not Betray Tara. Says the Gemara on the Rashi in the first wide line. Ema dam Rav Shimon lokech lamatzi other bay bechad tara kigon shlo nishtana ashar. The price didn't change. Ayay paisik al menas lekabel miyad v'nishtan. And then he delayed it v'tochach nishtana ashar. Then the price changed. When everything was within one time frame, and then it just dragged out, then Rav Shimon says, well, he's kind of nice. But betray Tani Kimas Nisa, and continues Rashi, did Rav Shimon ever say he's din? Moideo! Rav Shimon in such a case is Moide. The Chayzer, why? Ve'eno lav el mishapara. V'chinami okmas like Rav Shimon, linatzav meklalos mishapara, matzach lives like Yashar Gavav, v'lapirish v'chayzer v'mikabel mishapara, v'adin l'rabbanon d'b'jei tari, loi pligi. Because if they're stipulating for a latter date, Rav Shimon is going to have to be maskim that Mois will not be kainais in that case. Let's begin the next Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Malva Adam es harisin, one can lend to an ares chitin b'chitin lezara, wheat for wheat, in order for him to plow, but not for him to eat. Why? Shei Rav Gamliel, Malva es harisin chitin b'chitin lezara, be yoker for the higher price, v'hozlo when it went down, or bezol v'hakru for a cheap price it went up. Noitel and geshar azov, lo min halacha king. Says the Gemara, not because that was a lacha where Rav Gamliel did that. Right? You're just being machmer. Why? Because be'etzim you could lend chita b'chitin for an aris as long as it is to plant and not to eat. Pick it up from the Gemara b'siyata dishmaya.